Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for January 10th, 2019. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome everyone at home, say Happy New Year, and to introduce Carl Valenti. Carl Valenti is our new interim town administrator, someone we are extremely pleased to have on board and will be a great asset to the town as we proceed with our search for a permanent town administrator. So welcome, Carl.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Board members.
Looks like the first week in February, and I thank the town of Dover for all that it's done to be supportive of this project today.
Well, thank you very much. I know it's been tremendous labor on behalf of all of your neighbors and all the citizens of Dover who get to use the property. Remind me, at the top of Strawberry, going towards the Peabody, the entrance to Nona is a conservation trust. What was the original family that had that property that left it, and similar to this?
Are you talking about the Larrabee Way?
Larrabee, yes, Larrabee Way.
Right, and I believe that was two families, the Larrabee family being slightly further down the street. But that is a property that the town of Dover acquired in fee many years ago. I don't know the exact date.
That's great. It's just that there's such a history of this type of involvement where citizens and owners get together to do in the long-term nature what's in the best interest of everybody.
Right. And in this case, with the Blake property, the property is being acquired by Dover Land Conservation Trust, and a conservation restriction on the portion of the Blake property that we are purchasing will be done by the Land Trust, and the town of Dover is, at this point, I'm very happy to say, agreeing to hold the restriction in perpetuity.
That's great. Thank you. So I would accept a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding that is before us, and ask Mrs. Hunter, do you have any questions, or would you like to?
I would like to make a comment. I would really like to thank the Dover Land Conservation Trust for everything that they do in the town of Dover. This is just another parcel of land that all of you have worked tirelessly to help preserve. And I do strongly suggest or recommend to citizens of Dover to go and use this open space that is available to all of us thanks to the Conservation Trust. So I would like you to convey to all you members of the trust how grateful I am as a citizen of Dover for everything that you've done. It really helps maintain the rural character of the town, and I think many of us that live here, we live here because of the open space in Dover, and this is a way to ensure that future generations can enjoy it as much as we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
That makes it easy. I'll raise the, I'll move on the motion that John suggested.
Thank you, sir. Seconded?
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. And thank you very much. Is there an opportunity for anyone who may be watching us at home to donate and to continue the process with regards to the Blake property and a donation?
Well, that is a very nice softball. Thank you. We're in very good shape, but as you know, the Dover Land Conservation Trust is a 501c3 organization. We have over 50 donors to this project, and our recent annual fund giving has been excellent. We achieved the rate this year that was very similar to last year, We have grown quite a bit, both in acreage and in annual giving in recent years, and that's enabled us to do projects like the acquisition of the part of Pegan Hill several years ago, the Porter Trust, and now the Blake Woodlands. So thank you all for participating in this effort. It's really very exciting, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you, and absolutely, as Mrs. Hunter said, thank you to the Dover Conservation Trust. The second item on our agenda this evening is a participation of a discussion. Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you, Mrs. Hunter. We have to, we'll accept a motion for the second part of the Blake property and the memorandum of understanding dated January 10th, 2019, part 2.
Record of the vote for the Dover Board of Selectmen.
Record of the vote for the Dover Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
The Blake property. Second?
Great, I think we should note that this is to authorize the expenditure of $25,000 from the Arthur Adams Trust Fund. So,
The Arthur Adams Trust Fund for the purpose of financing the Dover Land Conservation Trust in its
And-
acquisition.
right, and an additional $25,000 from the Dover Conservation Fund.
And I think that we're pretty much covered. So
Right.
actually,
And it's interesting because this is work that we did back in December. So I guess it's just recording.
is it just recording and
Mr. Chairman, you voted this in December 6th, so you're down to signing just the...
To approve.
To approve it.
so it's a motion to approve the document previously?
Right.
We approved the authorization of the funds. So you previously approved the authorization of the $225,000 funds.
Any
Second,
other items?
yeah.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
I'll say aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, one and all. So it's a $50,000 approval. Thank you. Remote participation discussion.
This one, John Clare, Mr. Chairman, so that now there's a separate vote, we have the MOU with the DLCT.
So, let's do that again, 'cause that was the first one.
That was the first one, that was on the spending piece.
The second is for
Second
the
is-
actual acquisition of the transfer of funds.
The second is the memorandum of understanding between the Board of Selectmen and the DLCT. Yes, so it's two separate votes.
Two separate votes. So the first vote covers memorandum, the second vote covers the transfer. What do we do it backwards?
The other way back. The first vote covered the transfer, now
Transfer.
this will cover the...
So would you like that, a second, do you want to do that again, to revote? Or would you want another motion?
So I think the first motion you made was fine for the top page on the Blake property spending. So the second motion would be that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the memorandum of understanding between the town of Dover acting on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the Conservation Commission and the Dover Land Conservation Trust.
I would accept that motion.
So
Mr.
moved.
Spring, so moved. Seconded?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Just want to keep us honest.
Exactly. Thank you, sir.
Good thing somebody knows what they're doing.
It's just a matter of the order of the vote.
I know. I was making fun of all three of us.
Yes, that happens occasionally. All right. The next item on our agenda, remote participation discussion. Mr. Spring.
Well, it's been a long-standing sort of practice that in order to vote at committee meetings that you needed to be there publicly. There has been, I think, going back several years, a change in the law that allows for people to attend meetings from externally. This particular thing came to sort of hit me this year because the Carroll Community Center Project Committee is made up of both appointed members, 7, and 7 to 10 non-appointed members who come to the meeting, who like to participate in the meeting, and for many of them, coming to the meetings is difficult. And so, in thinking about how to allow them to come to the meeting, in essence, we thought video conferencing, permitting non-members who are part of the committee to participate in the meeting, it would make it easier on all to be able to do it by video conference. When I was talking with Carl about this and other members of the board, it really makes sense to adopt current operating procedures. The world literally works by video conferencing. People's schedules really limit their availability for many things. And it's my belief that when a lot of these processes that we use today were first approved in the past, they probably did represent best practices. I don't think they represent best practices any longer, and we need to recognize that fact and move where we can, conservatively, but with all due deliberate speed, to sort of adopt modern operating practices. And I think this would be a great deal on the Carroll project in particular, and for other committees when members of committee members, because of travel or whatever, cannot physically be present. That was sort of the background.
I completely agree with you. My only question is, so what we're talking about here is remote participation but not voting, right?
Well, there was a...
But
so that clear here. We should ask.
But my question, but I think...
Oh, for me? For
no,
Carol?
just general. So my question is, in order to allow voting, do we need to have a bylaw change? Or do you just adopt a new policy that allows for remote participation? That would include voting.
It's the latter. So the board of selectmen can adopt a policy that would allow remote participation. And if you adopt that under the state law, that includes voting. That's what it allows any member participating remotely to also vote.
Do you think there's a distinction? Would you like to have a distinction?
I do not want to have a distinction. There always seems to be a distinction with municipal law, so I just wanted to ask the question as to whether or not, doing this would require a bylaw change. I certainly agree that the way the world is going, even corporate board meetings, we allow, participation, remote participation. I'm also concerned that younger community members don't participate in committees because of the requirement to physically be present. And I would hope that putting such a policy in place would now open up opportunities for a different group of citizens to get involved. And so I am very, very supportive of allowing for remote participation. And then, selfishly, I may then get a conference phone of this room, which has been on my list for the longest time. So if you would like me to make a motion motion, I would be happy to do so.
Well, I just want to comment. I mean, we have, on Carroll, we have a number of people with young children. And there are times when attending the meeting is just simply not possible.
Right.
And giving them this opportunity, I would hope would have the same impact, that it would provide an attractive option for people with young families to play a more active role in the town. I mean, I think that would be a big thing.
I completely agree with you. You know, many of us don't have kids in the schools anymore. We don't know what it's like to be a young parent. We know how important it is to understand how those citizens, as well as the rest of us in Dover, would like to shape Dover for the future. So if there is a way to allow everybody or more people to participate in the municipal process, which for us, well, speaking for me personally, has been a very rewarding experience, I think I really truly support that. It's just moving along with the times.
So we just need to adopt the policy.
Do we have to write a policy?
Well,
There is one in the
Okay,
we have a sample here.
okay.
If you'd like to ask staff to now sort of revise this to a Dover version, we can bring it back at a subsequent meeting.
Sure. I think that's a great idea.
I would
I also would echo what both of you said, and thank you for the comments, and also remind everyone at home that the many things that we've had on our agenda this year, whether it was Carol, or whether it was search committees, or participation and representation, it has been a major topic that we've tried to address in many ways, that certainly the Council on Aging has addressed, and something that you've put on your schedule, Camille, to do, is how do we reach out more people? How do we get our messaging to more people and make this process more interactive and representative of all of our constituents? This is a great opportunity where if we had something that was on our agenda where people could call in and people could participate in a two-way effort to make what you're seeing and viewing on television more interactive, we can only benefit from it. So it's been something that we have tried to do since this board was constituted, so thank you. Yeah.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need?
I thought you were going to make the motion. You said you were ready to go.
We can simply say that we're having the opportunity to review the language and then bring it back to us.
If you want to just, basically you're asking me to bring forward a draft policy for a future meeting for you to consider. Be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yes, we are asking you to do that, and we will look forward to it, and look forward to making it a permanent part of our process going forward.
Can I order the phone?
You can.
Yeah. Don't order the phone.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
I don't think you were in jest. I will also look into having
Right. no,
conference call phones.
Right.
Because that's,
It's necessary not just for meetings, but for the staff as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
Right.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you all. Updates. Rail Trail, Mrs. Hunter.
So actually, Mr. Valente and I have a call scheduled with the town council who is assisting us, Steve Anderson, with the rail trail. Before the holidays, I met with Friends of the Dover Greenway, and we talked a lot about the motion that was approved at town meeting about the escalation in costs for the project, and whether or not it was a viable option for them to actually raise 100% of the funds. There were difficulties raising funds for certain things such as perpetual care. So we also talked a little bit about where we stand in the process with the MBTA and what the next steps would be. So prior to going back to Friends of the Dover Greenway or having them attend this meeting, I thought it would be best for Mr. Valente and I to meet with town council to get an update since the beginning of the year
as to whether or not any progress has been made at the MBTA and what are the next steps. Both Friends of the Dover Greenway and the Board of Selectmen recognized that there were restrictions on what was voted at town meeting, and if we were to make changes to some of the items that were agreed to, we would need to go back to town meeting to get approval.
Right.
But at this point, we're not there. We want to see where the MBTA stands with respect to being able to execute a lease in escrow contingent upon being able to raise funds or not, so that's my not so eloquent update.
The only thing I would add to the rail trail part is we are continuing to keep an open dialogue with the Hunt Club, and I met this afternoon with Lisa Fitzgerald Lewis and Sarah Monaco from the Hunt Club, just to relay to them what Mrs. Hunter just announced to everyone. So it's something that we are, again, trying to do and keep the dialogue, keep the lines of communication open with all the interested parties and make sure we are all on the same page. So thank you, Mrs. Hunter. Carroll Community Center, Mr. Springett.
Okay. I'm happy to report that we had our second meeting of the full committee last night. And at that meeting, we reviewed progress to date. So it actually was a fair amount of progress, given that it happened over the holiday season. Where to begin? We continued to refine our cost estimates based on all of the work that had been done by previous committees. We reviewed those cost estimates with Don Mills and Kathy Weld and Carl Warnick, I think Monday, the 7th. We compared what our numbers and the on-site insight capital needs assessment numbers, and Don Mills was kind enough to go through all that work, and it was really very helpful. Although the numbers between the two, between the older work and the newer work were quite similar, there were some discrepancies between what was in one, what wasn't in one, et cetera. So we got that straightened out, we think. Don also then, we got into a discussion about, well, it's 2018, if the Carroll Community Center was going to continue in use as a town facility, what additional things might we now think about for future use of a 20 or 40-year building?
So was that question posed assuming no renovation, just keep it going as is?
It was, so essentially, all the work that had been done to date was sort of basically remediation of deficiencies within the building.
Right.
There were a few things that were included in the sort of 10 million round number, that things like redoing the cafeteria, things like doing work in the 71 extension that were also included in that. But we were concerned that, okay, so a lot of this work goes back in time, but now, looking forward, are there other things we might consider or should consider? So it was an addition to the work that hadn't been done. And he, he's pretty thoughtful about that. There were a few things that he suggested. We talked about solar, we talked about, can we change the internal structure of the building to make it more warm, more accommodating? And he said, depends on how much money you want to spend. But he certainly gave the impression that the building was more adaptable than I was led to believe when we did similar work on capital budget committee. So that was sort of interesting. Yeah, no, and I thought it was a particularly decent meeting, a good meeting. We made Carl come along, keep us honest again. So that sort of completed that work. We think that we'll have those numbers finalized by the end of January. The subgroup, the second subgroup, the other subgroup is working on getting prepared to go visit other towns. So people are identifying what towns, putting together a list of questions, very similar in many respects, to the soil work. And in fact, we're going to try to get Bob to come in and do work for us. Because, the appendices, yeah, exactly. Bob has the experience. Many of the towns that we identified are duplicate. And I always am way happy to beg, borrow, and steal other people's work than to sort of reinvent it from scratch. So, yeah, and then, so then, what we're going to try to do is finalize that sort of sourced kind of material by the end of the month, and then start site visits in February. And then the third thing that Ford and I decided to do, and this was literally at last night's meeting, was we want to start reaching out to the community.
And you agreed? Right off the bat, you and Ford agreed?
We are a spectacular team. Let me tell you.
Good to know.
And good to know, that is.
Right, would you say that? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, see? Okay.
I'm impressed.
Our hard work.
As long as he does what I want, it's not a problem.
That's my line.
I know it's your line. Like I said, I beg, borrow, and
Carl, you seeing a pattern here?
And so when Ford and I met this morning, and we think we're going to ask COA and maybe the Dover Moms Association to host a discussion group that we can come in and talk not just to the boards,
great.
but to the members. Because we just need to start to go out, talk to people, tell them what we're doing, make sure that everybody has a reasonably straight understanding of the project and its goals and objectives, and to start to solicit feedback. So that should keep us busy and off the streets of Dover for the month of February.
At least.
You're hoping for more, I know, but it's not going to happen.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. Town administrator search.
Took a break.
We got him, we got him.
Right, to get an interim. I actually had a call, an email exchange with the Collins Center, and they had suggested that after Martin Luther King Day to begin the process again. So we have a profile that's 90% done, and a job description that's probably 85% of the way there. Probably ask for some input from you, Carl. And the the screening committee will meet again, and we'll begin to advertise the position.
So, Robin, at one point in time, I think Dick Kobayashi was talking about there's probably not a lot of activity in the early part of the year. Is that still?
Which is why he suggested that we wait until after Martin Luther King Day, and then there is, the profile in my mind is really important, because we really want to make sure that, we properly describe the challenges that the town faces. We try and do a good job on describing the town, because that's really going to help us get the right person.
Okay.
And then the job description also ties into that. And at first, we were really focused more on the job description, and we got ourselves in a little bit of trouble. So we took a step back and said, okay, based upon the Selectmen's planning meetings, what are the challenges we face? Because we really need this town administrator to help us lead Dover in the future. So I think there's still work to be done on that, maybe another month. And then, making sure that we advertise, get the right candidate. And thankfully, we have a very capable interim person here, which puts us all at
Well, you're getting a
ease.
lot of work to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, well, you had him until 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, and then last night, he and I met free cash and then met the warrant, so, which is a good segue into the free cash discussion. The group.
Plan it that way?
We did. We planned it that way, and I also planned right down to the minute our free cash, the continuation of our free cash conversation happened yesterday with the opening to be able to announce our certified free cash number at the very opening of our meeting yesterday. So I'm happy to announce, for those of you that don't know, our free cash was certified at $9,785,433. So as the preamble to our free cash conversation yesterday, or the continuation of our free cash conversation, we're in the process of putting out our notes and sort of guidelines for what we have been discussing about free cash since the beginning of the formulation of this board. Just to reiterate and sort of frame this discussion, we felt it was very important not to leave free cash to the very last article and the very last minute of town meeting, to be able to segment the free cash discussion, to be able to have our free cash formula strategy driven by data, driven by facts, to be able to articulate what our free cash position and the guidelines of our free cash position should be, certainly as the Board of Selectmen see them. So the four things that we will articulate in our free cash discussion were segmenting the warrant article, formula-driven strategy for guidelines as a percentage of what our free cash should be. The third thing was, if we do elect to pre-fund contingent outstanding liabilities, be it at the pension level for the regional school, that would be a separate item that we would address prior to the last warrant article, and we would certainly announce what our intentions would be. Ultimately, warrant would decide what numbers should be, but we certainly have been working very closely. Should say that at the very beginning of this discussion, we formulated the group with 3 members from warrant: Fred Hammerly, Erica, and Kate, both last year's chair and this year's chair, as well as our treasurer and our assessor. So we've had a very thoughtful number of discussions. We also included Bonnie Aiken to be, the board asked Bonnie to be a part of this discussion because of her institutional knowledge of the subject matter. We've also reached out to people outside of that group and have had a lot of input. So we thank the members of that group. We will continue the discussion. It is a work in progress, and we're making lots of very productive headway. The final thing that I would say is that this discussion is probably very timely this evening, and the update is very timely because everybody received their increases. Congratulations for those of you who had an increase in property value. For those of you that have complained about your increase in your property value to me openly, Mr. Springett.
How many times?
Many. Congratulations on the fact that you are now a little bit better off than you thought you were maybe last week. The final item was, in the stabilization process, or to segment free cash to fund things that we currently don't articulate as being in a stabilization fund, we will use free cash. We have the discussion to use free cash to create stabilization type accounts that would be used specifically for liabilities that we have identified.
Right, so
Yes, sir.
as a layman,
Yes, sir.
so we have a free cash of somewhere around 10 million.
Yes.
So if I understand it right, what we're going to do is we're going to set a guideline, a formula guideline, that the amount of free cash should be no less than 8%. What is the 8% in the?
The guidelines we would again leave that to warrant to determine what the actual number would be, whether it's 10% to 15%, whether it was
10 of what?
of our operating budget,
Okay.
of our total budget.
Okay.
So, Department of Labor, there are many different state agencies that give our treasurer and our assessor guidelines.
Okay, so-
And those guidelines are an example
So
of.
it shouldn't be, shouldn't be below this threshold?
Less than 10.
And it shouldn't be over that?
Over that.
Okay, and then within that number, right, within that free cash, then you're going to segment some of the money for you're going to allocate some of the money
Correct.
to stabilization.
To
fund.
stabilization.
And that discussion includes OPEB?
OPEB,
that's currently unfunded,
currently unfunded.
and then other identified,
Other identified items that have been brought to our attention, such as a stabilization for preservation and capital projects
Okay.
that are currently not funded.
okay.
Additionally, the part that takes a very lively part of our discussion is money that then is returned to our taxpayers.
To stabilize the rate?
Stabilize the rate.
Okay.
So the three components are rate stabilization, funding contingent liabilities, and currently unfunded preservation or capital projects.
Okay.
So, you know, as we all agree, this is a really important issue for the town. I think also important is for us not to do something quickly without having a framework that is well thought out that we operate under. For me, as a financial person, we do have a lot of free cash, but we also need to compare ourselves to other towns. And what other towns do is they have a bucket of free cash, and then they also have stabilization funds. So we really need to understand what are our liabilities?
Yep.
What hasn't been funded? Because the last thing in the world I want to be responsible for is giving back free cash and then having to go to voters for an override. So we need to be very, very thoughtful. Look at, and I agree with you, John, this should be very data-driven. We should look at metrics from other towns with AAA ratings to see how they've gone about allocating, you know, the free cash.
Yep.
We also need to make sure that we are able to educate the town citizens about free cash.
Sources and uses.
Sources and uses, how that balance grows, because all of us have the advantage of being involved in town government for many years, and I was relaying to Mr. Valente when I first became a member of the warrant committee many moons ago, I couldn't understand how it was that we would use $1 or $2 million of cash, and then the next year, the free cash balance didn't go down, it went up. And so I spent a lot of time with the staff here understanding what those components are. And as John has pointed out, there are many components to it. There's, and they're philosophical decisions that we've made as a town. We made a philosophical decision to take out free cash, which I call a savings account, and keep it in free cash. Whereas if you move it to a stabilization fund, it's for a specific cause, and you need a 2/3 vote at town meeting to utilize those funds. But we all know we have buildings that we need to maintain, and we need to fund those buildings. And so many towns have a capital stabilization account. So what I just want to make certain of, John, is that we're not trying to rush this process just to get to town meeting.
Without
I
fully
think
understanding.
without fully understanding and vetting the decisions that will be made that are not going to impact long-term residents of Dover, but new residents that are moving in. We've been fiscally very responsible, and I think we need to approach this with the same fiscal discipline that we have in the
It actually
past.
sounds like the discussion has been pretty.
Right.
It really has been. Very, very well said, Mrs. Hunter, and it is that, in essence, captures the conversation of the importance, the priorities, the strategic analysis, as you said last night, Carl, the data analysis, how we're trending, the discussions that we had with trend analysis, and how we've gotten to this point has been through fiscal management. And the town and its departments have been fiscally well-managed. We also, Kate Canny, Eric Alders, and Fred Hammerly also mentioned yesterday how in Warrant's directive to all the various parts of the town and essentially every budget item was to really give us the budget on use that is current. So cash and budgets that are being used, not budgets that were proposed and approved last year, but what your actual spend was. And the town of Dover has gotten extremely good. We've been functionally efficient on our budgets. So I think you said earlier, Mrs. Hunter, for a budget that's just under $40 million, to have a give back of under $2 million per year is very well managed. Each department is managing their budgets extremely well.
And citizens need to understand that what's different about municipal finance is you can't just go and tap your free cash account if you have a crisis. So every municipal finance is cash-based. So you need to make sure in your budget that you have probabilized some number of contingencies, because it's going to happen. You don't know what it is. So in corporate America, you can budget very conservatively in costs, because you can go to your excess funds and use those to pay for things that have come up, but you can't in municipal finance. And so we do expect a certain percentage of the budget always to get returned, because those are just contingencies that we built in that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's very different for for citizens that are used to a corporate budget to understand. Because there is fluff, so to speak, built into the budget, because it has to be. Otherwise, we would have to have special town meetings to get money to replace a boiler that went down or something like that, right?
Not the boilers.
Right, not the boilers, no, I didn't say that.
I will say our assistant town moderator, Dave Haviland, who runs Beaumont Capital, has been a great resource, somebody that this discussion group has reached out to and been a strong advocate of. We have to be mindful that this conversation cannot take place in the vacuum, that we have to look outside of what's happening from an economic standpoint, and he was quick to point out both last year and the year before that we are in the very late stages of a very healthy economic cycle, and that we have to be mindful it is not going to last forever. So we want to be prudent, but we do not, as Mrs. Hunter said earlier, set an example or expectations that this amount of money that we're discussing this year will be the same amount of money next year, and that the items that we're addressing this year will be the same as next year. They possibly could be. It's our intent that they will be. However, we are going to be mindful, prudent, and very aware that we are here today, and we want to be very careful of where we'll be next year and not commit or overcommit any amount of money, whether it's for stabilization or for funding. So I hope that covers all the bases.
Yeah, I think it was good.
I just think one more thing, Mr. Springer, perhaps you could explain to many of the citizens who did look at their tax bill, and their tax bill was significantly higher, and we got numerous calls about how could my taxes go up so much. So perhaps you could talk about the process of the increase.
As you related it to us earlier.
Oh, I can't do that.
We'll correct you if you don't do that.
So we all know the tax bill is based on market value of the house, and for many, the incremental increases in market value. Really, when I was talking to our treasurer, the housing in the 800 to $1 million range had much more market demand, so there was much more market value increase in that particular segment of the housing market. And so that accounts for some of the increases that people may have seen. The more interesting thing was almost procedural. So I'm not quite sure how the assessors work, but there was an increase in people's taxes, and rather than spreading the increases equally over the 4 quarters that we get the tax bills for, they backloaded it. And so instead of taking the increase over 4, the increase is over 2. So when I got the bill due February 1st, it was a fairly big jump percentage-wise, and that raised the shock. So those 2 factors influenced the tax bill. And really, I think it's, for many people, it's the fact that it's backloaded. The
Right,
increase is
exactly.
backloaded on the last 2 quarterly payments was really the thing that added to shock.
Right, and I think if you do read your tax bill, there is a notice that always says the first 2 installments are,
Right.
what's the word? Are preliminary,
Preliminary.
and that
Yep.
they get adjusted in the last 2. So that is what has happened to many
Yep.
people.
Camille?
The Council on Aging, a lot of people have told us about the tax bill and the increase in their taxes, the same way that you have, Bob. And we have formed a subcommittee of people who are studying the problem and thinking of ways of informing our people how taxes are formed, what they can do, how they can get a reduction if they need it, et cetera. So the Council on Aging is working on that, and we hope to have at our next meeting a report from the subcommittee. And, see what happens.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and very detailed updates. Next item on the agenda is for our town administrator, the first update of town administrator and his first week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, I apologize, first 2 weeks.
But you only have 10 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'll just lead off with, the first 2 weeks have been wonderful. It's like a family here, and although I'm the new relative in the family, I've been very warmly accepted, so I really appreciate it, including the board's reception for me on my first day. The staff has just been terrific. I enjoyed every day of being here. I have
4 quick items for you to update you on. First, I'll just follow up on your discussion about free cash. I did ask staff earlier today with that free cash number, about 9.8 million, to pull together an analysis for you of what are the components of that, how much is revenues in excess of estimates, how much are the turn back, the unexpended balance, how much is the carry forward from prior years spent free cash, and anything else. So they're working on that piece. So it'll be a little bit more data for you, and I've asked the staff to go back to at least 2014, so you'd have some history there, some trends to look at. Second, our new town accountant, Catherine LaPlante, started on Monday of this week. And she comes with tremendous experience from the town of Millis. We're very fortunate to recruit her. On this coming Monday, she and I are meeting with our retired town accountant, Carol Weidman, to talk about the work Carol has done every year for the warrant committee in pulling together the budget. Since I'm new to that, Kathy's new to that, but Carol does that work, so she'll help us making that transition so that we can make sure we provide the warrant committee with the information that they need. Third, Mona and I just wanted to confirm the board members' attendance at the MMA annual meeting for the end of next week, Friday and Saturday. If you know, are you all each planning to be there, or do you know if you're... What's
Yes, our practice is to attend on Friday, opening session, afternoon events with a fabulous lunch. It's the only time the town actually gets to feed Mr. Spring at lunch.
So because of my schedule, I will not be able to attend it, but I will.
So I get 2 lunches.
No, I will come to lunch, so rather than. It's just like, I will come to lunch.
Come and put on lunch.
I just won't go to another meeting, so
Okay.
I don't want to pay for my entrance fee.
Okay.
I just don't think I can do.
All right.
Two members will be there.
And then last item on my list is, I guess, looking for a volunteer among the board. We're going to be beginning negotiations. Negotiations with our laborers union and the highway department. Their contract ends on June 30, and they've asked to start collective bargaining. My understanding is the
I
price.
second on this motion.
One member of the board has been active as representative.
Looks like the board's all in favor of that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and
You know,
this is
I'll
typical.
read the announcements.
Yeah, it is very typical. Thank you, sir. Any other items?
That does it for me, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a busy 2 weeks.
It's been a busy 2 weeks. The next item on the agenda is to approve the mileage reimbursement rate and mileage reimbursement rate of,
So 58 cents.
58 cents.
Yeah, 58 cents.
Thank you very much. 58 cents per mile.
It's the IRS money standard.
The IRS mileage standard rates for 2019. Will accept a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. To approve the Selectmen's fiscal year 20 operating budget, number 911, Norfolk County Retirement. Any discussion?
I'm assuming this number's given to us.
It is.
It is.
And so it looks like a 7% increase year over year.
It is.
And the number is 1,421,421.
$1,421,027.
Second motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to,
Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, sir. Other business. The start of other business, although it's not something we need to vote on, the Board of Selectmen wants to just announce that we will be in the process of looking at a strategic initiative, and we'll be asking, we'll be opening a article in the warrant for our IT strategic plan funding request. Anything you'd like to add to that? Would you like to add anything?
no, I think that's right.
Would you like to add anything to that? So, just to make everyone aware of that, that's an item that's been on our agenda when we met very early on, the goals, initiatives, something that we really thought is important, that we need to get ourselves a strategic plan and vision that we can manage to with regards to our IT infrastructure. As everyone's, I'm sure, aware, the IT budget can be expanded dramatically, and we want to be mindful that we keep that on a thoughtful, predictive basis. So that's an item we will be coming to town meeting for. Other items under our outside business, award washed sand bid, which Chief Hughes is very diligent about year after year. Any questions with regards to this, Mrs. Hunter? Mr. Spring? Will accept a motion to approve. So moved. As submitted by Mr. Hughes, by Chief Hughes. Seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And should announce that PA Landers Inc. of Hanover was the low bidder.
And the amount?
And the amount was $36,860. for sand deliver and sand pickup of $14,000. And SM Russo and Son sand pickup, $45,000 was the second bid. And obviously, Reed Landers was awarded the contract. So congratulations, and thank you. Of course, yeah, the price delivered sand is $2.98 more per ton than last year. The price of sand pickup, $4 more than last year. Assuming $4 per ton more than last year. So many of you may be familiar that the sand distribution, the sanding of the roads, and then obviously the removal of the sand in the spring is something that the chief is very diligent. The roads of Dover are in incredible condition constantly, so we thank him for his diligence.
So just to add, so I drove back and forth to New Jersey the last couple of days. Coming back to Dover, and Dover roads, it is very good.
It's remarkable.
Very.
How well maintained they are. The reserve fund transfer for building maintenance, we have a request for a $22,000 transfer for building maintenance. The funds will be used to bring an aging holding cell into compliance. This request was made by the chief at last night's warrant committee meeting. The chief articulated that while the cells are used, I'm going to get this right, 58 times per year, that one wouldn't expect it would be $22,000 of needed maintenance, but it has mostly to do with rust that's formed on the basin of the sinks and the toilets that are inside the cell. So that's where the $22,000 is needed to be spent.
So we had we got into trouble a little bit on one of these transfer requests, and I think if I remember that, it might have been for COA looking for a request earlier. And so one of the questions that came up is, to me, when I was reading this, and I hope I'm remembering the prior process correctly, but there was this issue about foreseeability. If I have it right, the idea is if these things are foreseeable, you're supposed to plan for them in your operating budget. And so it seems to me that given the background information that this was an ongoing sort of issue that had been raised a couple of three times in the past, and I don't see how, assuming that there is this need for unforeseeable, I don't see how this is unforeseeable. And the second question I have is the amount is $22,000, and I'm assuming it has to go through the procurement process.
Yes.
So we're not sure about the amount. And then the third thing is, why not wait and put the number in the fiscal year 20 budget? Why do we need to do a reserve fund?
So when I read this, I think it's because there was an inspection.
Yes.
And this is a safety violation, and so we really had no other choice but to rectify it now. To your point, I also wonder why this wasn't part of capital and of the capital process. And again, we've talked a little bit about potentially getting capital needs assessments for all of our buildings. The capital needs assessments, that the school uses those as a tool for capital. And maybe if we had one of those, we would have known that this was something that was coming in. When I read this, I had the same thoughts that you had, but I realized that this was an inspection, and in the past, it seems as though we've been able to rectify the non-compliance, but this time we just haven't. So I think dissimilar from the other situation. So the other situation, they knew that they wanted to revamp the newsletter. An estimate wasn't put into the budget, and they asked for a reserve fund transfer to cover that. This case sounds very similar, but it also doesn't, because we're subject to inspections for this.
This most recent failure report lists issues noted as repeat, dealing with the toilets in the cells.
The
So is
rusted.
it just sort of a deferred maintenance thing that never got addressed, and now we're being asked?
Or it's not, well, we could ask the police chief, but it's not unreasonable to assume that if you rectify the situation the last time, that it wasn't gonna come up again. But I don't know.
So again, I just want to be consistent as a board, the way we treat.
I can only speak to two of the many things that we were just discussing. And just to reiterate what the chief said at warrant last night when we presented this, which was approved by in regards to the transfer. So the bowl itself is stainless steel. It's the inside of the bowl.
Yeah,
That
no,
is-
I understand, I mean, it doesn't sell, not as
Really?
on a visit. Didn't know shots, just went in, took a tour, so, yeah.
Additionally, the second part.
Well, you know, there's not a lot of space in these things.
You digress.
I always
The
digress.
second part of this is the suicide prevention portion and the non-compliance for the suicide prevention portion was an addition to what the inspectors have been looking at and built into their process. So that is something that's new to the chief, or it's certainly maybe not new to the chief, but new to the process.
Okay.
Okay, so to be in compliance with both the number of measures that he's noted from, that were brought to their attention by the Department of Public Health in this most recent inspection. Additionally, the doors to the cell are not any longer ADA compliant because of the size of the wheelchair now that you have to meet. So there are things, essentially, some of these things are a moving target. They are giving us as a town a different set of guidelines than we've had in the past. Would you say, Carl, does that somewhat?
It does. I'll just add one other piece, because I've had the same situation happen in my other communities. Once you get the inspection back from the state and the requirements, they give you 21 days to rectify it. Now, they don't expect anybody to get it fixed, in this case, in 21 days. We have to show that you have a plan, in this case, funds available to go out and do the bids to have it fixed. So, while Mr. Springer is very correct, why isn't this sort of part of the regular process? This inspection was done in fall, we got the report just recently. And so now he's got 21 days to respond, to say, here's our plan. And it's primarily the suicide risk that,
Is that what's driving it?
that's driving it. Yeah, because that's what puts the town in liability. You know, the rusted toilets has to be done, that's not what's driving this. They want to do everything at once, just for economies of scale.
And it is a moving target.
No, they're not. It's as I said, I want to make sure that we're being consistent in the way that we're treating.
No, and I agree, and, you know, you can always learn from things that come up, so maybe there is a way, as part of capital budgets, to maybe see if there's any new compliance issues on the horizon that we
Yeah, yeah, right,
incorporate
exactly.
into it.
Well, yes.
Right, so we need to vote
We
on
have to
this,
Vote on
right?
this.
You have to vote so that we can submit it to
Submit
the
it to
warrant
the-
committee for their official consideration.
So I'd like to make a vote to submit this to warrant committee for their consideration.
Seconded?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And Carl, thank you. That there was, as part of the chief's presentation last night at warrant, that was the part that did get, was questioned, and
You were sleeping?
no, I was taking copious notes, but there was a lot of.
Well, that's what got in the way, you were taking notes and you never read them.
That's why I said I could speak to 2 of the 15 parts that you had brought up, but that goes right. So,
So in recognition of John's volunteering for the negotiations.
We'll let him read.
I'm going to volunteer to read this extensive list
Magnanimous.
of special liquor license.
Wow,
Right.
thank you.
January 22nd, Boston College on process, business meeting with dinner at the Connor Center. January 27th, Wellesley Wellness Retreat, Elm Bank.
Can I
That's
just,
an additional page of 40, do you want that?
Mona, can we note that for the first time he's done it, there are 2. There's normally 30 that I'm reading.
My first meeting, you had me
All right.
75.
All in
I'm-
favor?
Yep, aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. One item that we touched upon, I just want to mention before we approve the minutes. Our town accountant, Carol Weidman, had her last day of service with us, official service. As Carl mentioned earlier, that we welcomed our new town accountant, but I just want to, on behalf of the board, we did have an opportunity to thank her publicly, and we had an opportunity to thank Carol for her years of service, and the town has functioned extraordinarily well. And Carol was a huge asset, and I'm happy to say she will continue to be an asset to the town, because she has been asked to step in and help the transfer and the transition to be an asset to us that we can use. So thank you, Carol Weidman, for your years of service, and thank you for your continued help to the town and to Carl and to us.
So I have just a funny comment to follow up. On Friday, I went in to say goodbye to Carol and thank her, and she said, I said, so did you get everything done you wanted to do? And she said, yeah, except for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She said, I wanted to leave here with a certified free cash flow. So I said, well, maybe if you wait until 5. You know, but I thought that was just so indicative of
her.
Carol as a professional, and, you know, she wanted to make sure that everything she was responsible for had been taken care of before she left.
Yeah.
Terrific, that's terrific.
That is terrific, and we also said farewell and wished one of our officers, our 20-year officers, Chris Von Handoff. Chris retired in mid-December. Just a great guy, a great asset. For years, he was the officer in the schools. Chris is taking a job at Northeastern University. It is absolutely their gain, and we will be forever in his debt for the years of service he gave to Dover. So thank you both. We have to approve minutes from December 1st. And December 6th, but we will,
December 1st?
December 1st.
Motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meeting on December 1st, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And the minutes of December 6th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from the December 6th meeting?
Seconded?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes of December 8th.
This one's up to you.
I move that we accept the minutes of December 8th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Mona, thank you very much. Very well done.
Let the record show, I drafted the
Yeah, she
minutes
did.
for
Do you think that is going to get left undone, unsaid?
Citizen comments.
Citizen comments. Maureen?
Okay.
Seeing none. Thank you all. Thank you very much for everyone at home for your attendance. A great evening. Very well done. Carl? I will adjourn the meeting at 8:41.
So
How's
if
that?
you want, so I have a new toy, and I can,
I think it's 7:40.
I'm sorry, 7:41. 7:42, according to Robin's watch.
So moved or whatever.